Hello and welcome to episode 109 of Glitch Report. My name is GnittWitt. Thank you so much for stopping by, saying hi, kicking it with me today on the stream of dreams, the show of shows, and everything in between. You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree, linktree.com/GnittWitt. You can find my Twitch account. You can find my Instagram threads and regular old Instagram account. You can find my Blue Sky. You can find my YouTube and my TikTok, all in one convenient location. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It is Star Wars week around these parts because Star Wars Outlaws is out tomorrow, Friday. We're recording this live Thursday morning, but Friday is the official day for Star Wars Outlaws, unless you got a chance to play the early access version of the game, which was available for people who pre-ordered the expensive edition of the game, or in my case, you got the Ubisoft $20 a month subscription service thing, which gives you access to premium versions of all of Ubisoft's games, including day one games, which then makes those day one games into day -3 games because I got to play it 3 days early, and I'm going to tell you all about it on the episode today. But it's not just me who's going to be giving his opinions on Star Wars Outlaws. I want to kick things off doing things a little bit differently. We're going to do a review roundup of Star Wars Outlaws. You can find, kind of these collected reviews for for games, on places like OpenCritic, on Metacritic, and things like that. They're kind of operate similar to like Rotten Tomatoes for movies, where it's not them reviewing it, but it's, collecting critic reviews and stuff like that, and kind of, breaking down the math and all of that stuff. So I'm going to be using OpenCritic, opencritic.com. And what we currently have for Star Wars Outlaws is a strong critic rating. That's what they put, with a 77 average for the game out of 100. So 77, 7 out of 10 if you want to, do the math. I really don't want to do the math. With 74% of critics recommending the game. So we're going to take a quick look here at some of the reviews from these sources. PC Gamer giving it a 73 out of 100, saying that Star Wars Outlaws is Ubisoft's most ambitious game in years, but it plays the basics way too safe. Eurogamer giving it a 2 out of 5, saying that Massive being Ubisoft Massive, the developer, Massive barely peels away the many layers of Ubisoft's open world isms in Star Wars Outlaws. It's a fatal error. IGN 7 out of 10, saying Star Wars Outlaws is a fun intergalactic heist adventure with great exploration, but it's hindered by simple stealth, repetitive combat, and a few too many bugs at launch. So I mean, we're going to maybe see some games that are a little on the lower side, like Eurogamer, but it seems like that, kind of going back to what's the average and stuff like that. The average really seems to be that 7 range, maybe an 8 range, depending on how they feel. And going into this, my thought process was, sorry, I'm scrolling through this while I read it. My thought process was, I would love a 7 out of 10. I'll take a 7 out of 10. Like, some people with video games, they have this, this feeling that whether it be a genre that they really like or not, they wouldn't get out of bed for a 7 out of 10 video game. I'd be there all day. I might not always be there day one. In this case, Ubisoft does make it very easy to be there day one. But I was very, to me, a 7 out of 10 will get me excited. This is basically where I'm at with a 7 out of 10. When it, because some games launch rough, some games launch broken, buggy, all of this shit. But to me, a 7 out of 10 is more than enough for a game. Video Games Chronicles. Shout out to Video Games Chronicles. Video Games Chronicles giving Star Wars Outlaws a 3 out of 5, excuse me. I can't even do the math properly at this point. Video Games Chronicles 3 out of 5, saying Star Wars Outlaws is a pulpy, Uncharted style adventure that doesn't quite fulfill its potential. Kay and Nix lead a great cast through a well-paced, punchy story, but the game's reputation system and Syndicate storyline in general feels undercooked. So we're maybe getting this idea that the game is a little undercooked in a couple of areas, ambitious, potentially undercooked in some ways. That's going to do it for the Video Games Chronicles, for all of the reviews so far. But what we're basically looking at is 77 average, 74% recommended, and that's based on 90 critical reviews. Now what we're going to do is, I figured if we're already talking about Star Wars Outlaws, might as well share what I think about Star Wars Outlaws. So I had the chance to play it. I started messing around with it. What was that, Tuesday? I think Tuesday night. No, Tuesday afternoon. Tuesday afternoon. I had because you got the chance to like pre-download the game ahead of time. So Monday night I was downloading it, and then it was around Tuesday when I had the chance to actually start playing it. And I more or less just kept chipping away at it, trying to find, side quests to do, main story missions. Because before I came to the show today, what I really wanted was to be able to at least say, I have done the stealth, I have done the shooting, I have done the open world stuff, I've done some of the side quests, the main stories, and I've done the space combat. I've been in outer space. And then I was just going to share with you kind of that. That was my plan. The original plan was to basically be able to say, I've touched a little bit of everything in this game. Here's what it is. And I'll tell you maybe more about how I feel about it, maybe on another episode of the podcast. But remember what I originally said, which was that a 7 out of 10 is more than enough for me in some cases. That being said, having now spent some time with Star Wars Outlaws, I even made a video of it. It's up on my YouTube, it's on my TikTok, it's on my Instagram. Having now spent some time with Star Wars Outlaws, I get this feeling that the 7 out of 10s are incredibly generous. Going back to perhaps my feelings might be leaning more to the Eurogamers of the world, offering it a 2 out of 5, because I think that game is kind of a mess. And while there are some moments of enjoyment to be had, there is far too many times when I was shooting something or I was participating in the stealth where I just thought to myself, the core basic mechanics of combat and stealth in this game are not fun. Are just not fun. So when you realize that, like, I struggle with this because this is not a traditional review. I wouldn't call myself a reviewer. This is not a traditional review. I'm not writing a review because I'm not going to finish this game. And in fact, I would argue it didn't take me very long to realize that I didn't want to finish this game. I didn't want to play this game anymore. So when that happens, I feel like I kind of struggle with, like, well, what if the combat gets really good 20 hours in? What if the combat gets really good for 20 hours in? Then I will have spent, hours and hours not having fun to get to, a part of the game that's fun. And then if I were to grind it out for 20 hours to get to the fun parts, how much more fun would there be in a game like Star Wars Outlaws, or any game for that matter, right? Whether it be open world, first person, whatever type, it doesn't even matter what type of game. It could be a fucking match 3 puzzle game. It could be a new Tetris for all I care. If you told me that if you kept at it, the game would get better, I would say that, like, we live in a world, and I personally inhabit a lifestyle that does not have a lot of patience for things that start out bad. I need things to kind of, make it worth my time pretty early on in the grand scheme of things. And a great example of this is Star Wars Acolyte. I watched that first episode of Star Wars Acolyte, And there were a couple of moments that I was like, oh, this show seems pretty cool. This seems all right. And I would say, 3/4 of the time I was like, this show kind of sucks. Turns out that show gets canceled, whatever, it doesn't matter. But, and I'm not even using Star Wars Outlaws as a reference because of Star Wars Outlaws. But if we're looking at a scenario where, 75% of the time it's not a good experience, why would you stick around to see if that math is going to turn out any different? And I think that's kind of where I felt with Star Wars The Acolyte. This is certainly how I feel with Star Wars Outlaws. So just to kind of get into it. So it is a third-person shooter. It has a very light cover-based mechanic to it. It's not a scenario where you're like pressing a button to stick to the cover. It's just that if you crouch behind some sort of wall or waist-high cover or something, and then you are crouched and then you aim, you kind of pop out of the cover. But it's a very light, very soft, kind of suction to the cover mechanics, for lack of a better word. So immediately I felt like that wasn't really my thing, because when I want to get into cover, I feel like I want a very deliberate sense of cover where I can stick to that wall or that waist high cover and then kind of move in between that cover to pop out from the left, pop out from the right, pop out from the top, whatever the case may be. But it's very easy to just like move yourself out of that cover and then you're just like standing like a jackass and you're like, okay, well, fine. But to make matters worse, I find that the shooting can feel rather imprecise, feel a little sloppy. And then I feel like the enemies take slightly too much damage to put them down. So I ended up busting the difficulty down from regular difficulty to easy, because I found that K takes a not a lot of damage, but the enemies feel a little more spongy. It's also pretty easy for you to get ganged up on by your enemies, but it wasn't necessarily, I didn't switch the difficulty because I found that it was not easy enough. I actually switched it because it didn't take me long to realize the shorter I can get through these combat encounters, the quicker I can get through these combat encounters, the better I'm going to feel about this game, because once the shooting starts, I don't necessarily feel like I'm having a good time. But that's not nearly as bad as the stealth that's in this game. So you play as Kay Vess. Kay Vess is this scoundrel type character who tries to and has seemed to live a life of crime up until you meet her and her little alien companion Nyx. Now, in the reviews, they kind of, a lot of people talk about how like this game pulls from a variety of Ubisoft like concepts and open world ideas and stuff like that, and that's 100% true, because Nyx, the alien companion, you can control, well, you can't control Nyx from what I played, but you can command Nyx to do stuff. And to me, that very much just feels like a lot of the ideas from Watch Dogs. The difference being is that instead of using a cell phone to use magical hacker magic to, open a door or steal something or whatever, you're aiming your alien companion. Nyx is an alien, not a robot, just to clarify. You were aiming your alien companion at, say, a stormtrooper, and then saying, steal that stormtrooper's key card or distract them so that I can sneak past them or attack them or whatever. In theory, that is not the worst way of handling stealth, is by being more, by underpowering the character to be like, you really can't shoot your way out of this scenario. You're going to have to sneak and really avoid using the alarm, really avoid triggering the alarms. The problem is that the fail states in which you do trigger the alarms are a hard fail. It's not like in Far Cry, where you can sneak into an enemy base and you can, the whole thing is you're sneaking into the base to take over the base. And if an enemy spots you, they trigger the alarm or whatever. It just basically triggers the combat. So you have to start shooting your way through this scenario or hide and do it again, when wait for them to cool down or whatever. This is like, no, you snuck into this Imperial base and now you have to restart from your checkpoint, and there's no if, ands, or buts. There are times when it feels like you can try to shoot the enemy that's about to trigger the alarm, and I'll tell you, the hearing range on some of these enemies is not very good. So there have been times where I've shot my way through a base only to come to a later portion of that base and be like, oh, they don't know I'm here. But when the game is like, this is serious stealth and you cannot fuck around, they mean it. Unfortunately, it means that it's a very dry pass fail experience, and really the only tools you can rely on is the commands that you can issue to Nyx. Which leads me to my big problem, which is I was doing a story mission in which I was supposed to utilize Nyx for my commands, and Nyx wouldn't do the commands. It's funny the way the commands work, because you can they give you a lot of visual indicators that this is the command you're going to issue, and it even shows a line of where Nyx goes to get to the objective that you want them to complete. So when you do something like open this door, it shows you the path in the environment that Nyx is going to take to get to the door that you want it to open. So to my surprise, Nyx gets stuck in a door. Like you crawl through a lot of vents and grates and stuff like that in this game. Very Batman-esque of like, I'm going to crawl through this, air vent or whatever. And Nyx and I get stuck, but whatever, like Nyx reunites. There's kind of like a button that's like, command Nyx to come back to you. And I'm standing there trying to open this door, and Nyx just is like stuck in the environment, and it won't go. And unfortunately, it's a scenario where like Nyx is stuck in the environment right next to where I'm supposed to issue the command to get Nyx to go into basically Nyx is going to crawl through a much smaller air vent to get to where I need to trigger this door. And it just wouldn't work. It would not work. So my problem with like the stealth is, even if you go through the tedious, boring, repetitive stealth tactics of, I'm going to distract this guard, then I'm going to walk past them, and maybe I can knock out this other guard, with some pretty awkward, like the when you do like a takedown of an enemy, like a stealth takedown, the animations are pretty bad. But I'm not even going to pick on the animations in this game. Even if you get through all the hoops you have to jump through to get to this really stale stealth mechanic system, you can often be rewarded with bugs that prevent you from making any progress. And that was about the point where I was like, wash my hands of this game. I'm done. What's the point? What's the point? Because even if I was shooting my way through this environment, I wouldn't be having that much more fun, but at least I'd make progress. But then you start to wonder, if you're not having fun, but you're making progress, at some point, when does the progress no longer matter in the grand scheme of your overall experience with the game? Because even if the shooting was great, even if the stealth was great, there are still problems with the game. So the other problems I have is that I don't think Kay Vess is a very interesting character. Despite coming across as somebody that is living a life of crime and has been stealing ever since she was a little girl and all this stuff, she comes across as a very awkward character. She lacks a lot of credibility. She lacks a lot of confidence. There are moments where you can have dialogue options where you can choose to lie to the Hutts. The Hutts have set you up on this mission that you can go on. And then once you realize the nature of the mission and what you find during the mission, you can lie to the Hutts, or you can say, hey, I found this thing. I want to work with you guys more. But every time Kay Vess lies to one of the characters in the game, it's like she's lying for the very first time. She just is so painfully awkward. She people compare this like, it's almost an Uncharted-esque scenario where she's kind of a scoundrel and heists and all this stuff. Like, this is not the Uncharted of anything. This is not, like, at no point is she like a lovable scumbag. She's just kind of awkward. She just seems new to this. And the reason why I'm picking on it is because there's literally a flashback where you're like a pickpocket, where it shows her being like a pickpocket running through the streets of, I don't know, Tatooine or something. And it's like, okay, so if you were like stealing shit from like Imperial guards at an early age, why is it that you can't lie to this, like, you know, broker for the huts? Like, what are we doing here? I will say that your alien companion Nyx is very cute, and you can customize Nyx, put a little bandana on Nyx, or, you know, goggles or whatever. There's customization with with KVS as well, in terms of like outfits and all that stuff. I think like one of the pre-order bonuses is you can look like Lando if you want. I got a chance to play some of the ship combat. It's very basic, but it's snappy. It's effective. It's actually one of the highlights in my opinion when it comes to the combat. It's pretty easy. I would say easier than even something like Starfield. Kind of a lock on, you know, boost, roll, dodge, duck, dip, dive, dodge, all that stuff. That was totally fine. The speeder bike is a little flimsy. I know that they want you to upgrade it, put, you know, materials into upgrading your speeder bike. It's a little flimsy and it feels almost like out of control. I guess I would say the speeder bike controls the way it looks in the movies, where it feels like you're riding some sort of uncontrollable rocket. It kind of gets to that, but the sense of speed isn't quite there yet, because of course they want you to spend 20, 30 hours doing side quests for the Crimson Dawn or the Huts or whoever, so that you can get better parts. The story, in my opinion, doesn't really like sink its teeth into me, at least early on. You know, KVS kind of gets caught up in the life of crime more than she already is, in some unexpected ways for her that kind of blow things up for her, which is fine. I'm more than happy to have a game that's like, all right, we're in the shit right here, right now, and shit's popping off. But at no point did I get a sense of like, oh, we're in real danger, or, oh, the people that we've crossed are really going to come back to get us, or anything quite like that. And then I would say, like, my time on PC, the graphics aren't super sharp. In fact, I find that game to be a little blurry looking. Like someone smeared a thin layer, but a noticeable thin layer of like Vaseline on the screen. It's just not super sharp and crisp. This is also a problem that I had in some cases with Forza Motorsport. I thought that the ray tracing and the lighting and the reflection and stuff like that were really, really good, but the actual raw textures of like what you were looking at on screen were very blurry. In this case, the game is so poorly optimized on PC that even if I were to, you know, crank up the ray tracing and stuff like that, the frame rate would take a significant hit. I would be running it at a very, very low frame rate, in my humble opinion, and it would still feel a little blurry and stuff like that. So, unfortunately, I have to agree with some of the lower end scores for this game. They can probably fix some of the bugs and make, you know, Nyx easier to command and more responsive to the commands. But I don't think they're going to change the part where the shooting just feels floaty and lifeless, and the stealth is just so goddamn tedious. So I don't think Outlaws is very good. I'm incredible. Like, here's the thing. I don't like take pleasure in this. I'm not like, oh, haha, like Ubisoft put out a game that's shit. Like, I've enjoyed a lot of Ubisoft open world games. Even if you want to sit here and criticize how formulaic Ubisoft open world action games are, whether it's Assassin's Creed or Far Cry, or whether it's the Avatar game, or whether it's you know, some of the Tom Clancy Ghost Recon games, like, I will show up. I will like, if there's icons on a map and shit to do, side quests to have, loot to be found, I'll be there. To put it in context, I would not have spent almost 90 hours playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla earlier this year if I didn't enjoy the formula that Ubisoft has for its open world games. Are they always the most, you know, rock solid, white knuckle, like cinematic, you know, deep storyline, engaging storyline basis? No, it's sometimes they kind of average out a lot of what the content in that game is from a qualitative standpoint in order to provide you with a lot of repeatable content, a lot of side quests, a lot of things to see and do that may not be that consequential, and in fact seem more like busy work, chores, and stuff like that. I'm all for it. I will show up. I would love it if the main story was good, but in some cases, like with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I kept going well after the story was good because I liked the combat. I liked upgrading, my Ivor and doing all that stuff. So like, believe me when I say like I'm down for some, Ubisoft style open world action games. I'm down for a lot of open world action games for that matter. I mean, I literally played through this year alone, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Horizon Forbidden West, and Ghost of Tsushima, which for some people might seem like a little too much and a little too similar, but I was all ready to play Star Wars Outlaws. I didn't like it. So with Star Wars Outlaws, the gameplay, most of the gameplay is either at best pretty flat, at worst it's really tedious and annoying. Graphically, it didn't do much for me from a storytelling and character perspective. It has some ideas, it's got some heart, but it doesn't seem to stick the landing, which is really unfortunate because like when I think about what Star Wars games are available, most of the Star Wars games that are available today, the contemporary Star Wars games of our time, are Star Wars Squadrons. So you're doing the pilot stuff, you're dogfighting. It's Ace Combat, but with TIE fighters. You have Star Wars Battlefront, which also features a little bit of space fighting, but it's mostly replicating the battlefield experience of you being a trooper, boots on the ground, all that stuff. And then the other thing that you have is the Star Wars Jedi games, which I didn't care that much for Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and I played even less of Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So for me, I was excited about the idea of like, Grand Theft Auto Star Wars isn't quite what this game was ever going to be, despite what people probably wanted it to be. But I was down for the idea of like, I'm going to be a dirtbag in Star Wars. Unfortunately, I feel like that dirtbag in Star Wars games comes with far too much baggage for me to recommend to anyone. And if you did play it, I wouldn't be surprised if you bounced off of it sooner rather than later. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the news. Stick around. We will be right back. Welcome back to the podcast. Kind of breaking news about Star Wars Outlaws, in fact. Word around town is that there is a game-breaking bug in the early access version of Star Wars Outlaws, and some players are being forced to restart the game and lose all of their progress. So remember, I am playing, and I've been playing, the early access version of Star Wars Outlaws. It came out 3 days early. The real day one launch is August 30th. But boy, oh boy, it seems like, those people playing the early access version are being punished for doing so. So for context, you have to buy the most expensive version of the game or get the Ubisoft $20 a month subscription thing on PC. But for those that are playing on the PS5 early access version, they may be fucked. So here's what's happening. Some Star Wars Outlaws players, I'm getting this from Kotaku. Some Star Wars Outlaws players hopping into the game via early access were in shock after a recent update made it impossible for them to progress further. Ubisoft's suggestion was delete your save and restart the game. Star Wars Outlaws hasn't officially released. The game will be out on August 30th, but there is a 3-day early access. However, Star Wars has sort of launched already thanks to the paid early access, and for some PlayStation 5 players who plopped down extra money to play early, they ended up stranded in space after a recent update, making it impossible for them to continue playing. Ubisoft seemingly can't fix these broken saves and is just telling people to completely restart. But they will be offering Ubisoft credits for your trouble. As reported by IGN and documented on Reddit and elsewhere by early access players, Ubisoft sent out this message asking players to start over in Star Wars Outlaws to some PS5 players on August 27th, following the release of the update 1.00.002. This is what Ubisoft said. They said, To experience the Outer Rim, we rolled out a maintenance to make sure everyone is playing the latest version of the game. As one of the players affected who had access to an older version of the game, we are aware you might be encountering some issues after this recent patch. We sincerely apologize for any inconvenience this may have caused. Once you've confirmed you have the latest version, please start a new game to fully enjoy Star Wars Outlaws as our team intended. If you continue on a prior save, you will unfortunately face issues and progression blockers. Keep in mind that you would have had to pay at least $100 US for the gold edition of Star Wars Outlaws, which provided 3 days of early access for the game. And now, after spending that extra money, you are an extra sucker because the progress made during that early access period has to be abandoned and you have to start a new game to keep playing. A day later, on August 28th, Ubisoft, seemingly aware of how frustrated some players were about the news, sent out another message promising to make up for the inconvenience, writing, "We are following up on the previous email we sent you regarding issues with an outdated version on PlayStation 5. We fully acknowledge that asking you to start a new game is not the best experience, especially during the early access period, and for that we apologize. To make your return to the Outer Rim a little more special, we are granting you an in-game Trailblazer trinket as well as 100 Ubisoft Connect units to redeem for in-game rewards, for example. We're actively working on adding the Ubisoft Connect units to your account so you can use these as soon as possible, and you can collect the trinket from the delivery crate in the back of the Trailblazer once you reach Tashara." There's like a story point in the game where you get access to your ship. So you can't do it until I'm assuming I'm going to make a bold assumption here. The game doesn't take that long to get your ship in the game. So I imagine that anyone who made this progress at least got far enough to unlock the Trailblazer in anyways. But Ubisoft, 100 Ubisoft Connect credits is like nothing, like absolute nothing. It's not like it's not even like $10 worth of stuff. Like I roughly, if I'm correct, and don't quote me on this, but I think the math is like $1 per Connect units. Like they basically gave you like $1 worth of Connect. I don't think you can buy anything. I do not think you can buy anything with 100 Ubisoft Connect credits, but I could be wrong. And a trinket is just like a little like keychain that you like. It's like a little thing you equip as a cosmetic. So that make good is nothing. That make good almost seems like a slap in the face of people because again, you had to buy the expensive minimum $100 US gold edition of the game to get access to the early play it early 3 days, and now they're fucked. I usually don't feel good about not liking a game. There's always this part of me that's like, oh, maybe I could have spent more time playing it, or oh, if I was in the right headspace, or oh, if I had done this or I'd done that. There's because I want to like games. I want to like games. But after seeing the most die-hard fans of this game get fucked over by this bug, and then have a make good that feels like a slap in the face, I actually don't feel so bad about not liking this game. Like there's almost this part of me that just wants to like make another video being like, oh, fuck Star Wars Outlaws for XYZ, fuck Ubisoft, all this stuff. I'm not going to do that because at the end of the day, like, you know, there are Ubisoft games I'm looking forward to. There are Ubisoft games I want to play. There are Ubisoft games I'll probably return to playing. But this could not have gone worse in terms of a game-breaking bug and Ubisoft's god-awful make-good attempt. So, I guess what I'm saying is that you saved a lot of money by not getting the early access version, and on top of that, you are not going to experience the same bugs as the people who were promised the premium experience by playing it day -3. Concord came out and it flopped. Sony's latest big game, that is their new competitive multiplayer shooter, first-person shooter, Concord, came out and it flopped. Came out last week on PS5 and PC. We don't have a ton of numbers to go off of, so keep in mind that like numbers are weird because nobody puts out sales data. Nobody puts out accurate, relevant, you know, up-to-date sales data the way that like the box office would. But what we do have is we have the Steam database. If you've Steam charts. If you've ever been to Steam charts, you can type in a game and you can see like what the peak player count was and the concurrent player count and all this stuff on Steam. And I'm going to actually go back and check. God forbid it's changed. Steam charts. Steam charts. I'm going to type in Concord. I have a pretty good idea that it hasn't changed. It has not changed. So what Steam charts does is over the last, whatever, you can go 48 hours, 7 days, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. So this is really all I have to go off of in terms of the popularity of Concord. But over the last hour, 108 people were playing Concord. The 24-hour peak was 190, and the all-time peak players online playing Concord at the same time was 660, with the 30-day average being 235. That's really low. That, like, I'm not trying to pick on, dance on the grave of Concord or anything, but that is incredibly low. That's incredibly low. For context, the all-time peak player count for Helldivers 2 just on Steam alone was 458,208 players, averaging 24,911 players average over the last 30 days. So it, like, pour one out for the folks involved at Firewalk Studios and Sony, but this game was sent out to die. It is not a free-to-play game. It is a $40 game. It was, I didn't mind what I played at the beta. I thought the shooting was fine. The characters were okay, like whatever. But it was sent out to die, and I don't know what to say, because 697 is not a lot of people. Real quick news story. PS5 is getting a steep price increase in Japan. Both the standard and digital models are going up by about $90. Now, I don't know anything about the yen. My understanding is the yen might not be so hot, but typically you see price decreases over time and not price increases, which just goes to show just how tight the margins are on these consoles, that even years and years later, in their home country, Sony has to increase the price of the PS5. Unfortunately, $90 extra to get the standard or digital model of the PS5 in Japan. Unionized staff at the Call of Duty studio Raven Software say that Activision is stalling over contract talks. So remember, Raven Software is working in conjunction with Treyarch to make Call of Duty Black Ops 6. Raven Software seems to be heading the story mode of Black Ops 6, whereas Treyarch seems to be working on the zombies mode and the multiplayer mode. The complaint was reported by GameFile and alleged that Activision and Microsoft are guilty of refusal to bargain / bad faith bargaining. The quote said, the statement reads, after Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, our members were optimistic that they would progress quickly to a first contract at Raven Software, Unfortunately, that has not happened. We encourage Microsoft to address the concerns raised in the unfair labor practice charge and make reaching a fair agreement a priority. Now, Microsoft spokesperson told GameFile, we are committed to negotiating in good faith. That's what they said. Activision Blizzard officially recognized the union, which was established by a group of QA workers in 2022. The Game Workers Alliance was the first labor union formed at a major U.S. gaming company. Now, at the time, then Activision CEO Bobby Kotick said, with the election having concluded, we will engage in good faith negotiations to enter into a collective bargaining agreement. While first labor contracts can take some time to complete, we will meet with CWA leaders at the bargaining table and work towards an agreement that supports the success of all our employees. The future strengths, our commitment, getting caught up on words. What do we got here? I'm just going to read it one more time. While first labor contracts can take some time to complete, we will meet CWA leaders at the bargaining table and work towards an agreement that supports the success of all our employees, that further strengthens our commitment to create the industry's best, most welcoming and inclusive workplace, and enhances our ability to deliver world-class games for our players. So I guess Bobby Kotick started writing checks that Microsoft doesn't have any interest in cashing. I really hope it all works out for those that are at the bargaining table. I especially hope it works out for the good folks at Raven Software. I mean, they kind of led the charge on a lot of unionization efforts in the United States as it pertains to video game developers unionizing. And whatever, I think that like the studios and the people, the little people at Activision have had a rough go at it for a very, very long time prior to Microsoft buying them. My only hope is that they get the respect and treatment that they deserve, but also the respect and treatment that they are fighting for. This is the last news story. Bungie. Bungie reportedly fired former Marathon director after misconduct allegations by female staff. The veteran director was replaced in mid-2023. I'd have to go back and see if I even did a news story on this originally, but I don't think the news came to light until now. Earlier this year, former Valorant game director Joe Ziegler announced that he had taken over as Marathon game director, amidst reports that the former game director Christopher Barrett had left the company. A new Bloomberg report now claims that Barrett was fired by Bungie after being accused of inappropriate behavior. Barrett, who had previously worked as an artist, art director, and game director on the Halo and Destiny games, was assigned as game director on Marathon before leaving the company in March, as per previous reports. However, Bloomberg sources now claim that the reason for Barrett's departure was a termination following an internal investigation in which at least 8 female employees raised complaints that he had behaved inappropriately towards them. According to the report, Barrett was said to have told lower-level female employees that they were attractive, asked them to play Truth or Dare, and suggested he could help them advance their careers because of his wealth and power in the studio. In a statement to Bloomberg, Barrett said of his 2.5 decades at Bungie, quote, "I feel that I have always conducted myself with integrity and been respectful and supportive of my colleagues, many whom I consider my closest friends. I never understood my communication to be unwanted, and I would have never thought they could possibly have made anyone feel uncomfortable. If anyone ever felt that way about their interaction with me, I am truly sorry." Bungie's parent company, Sony, did not give a comment on that specific basis, but said it, quote, "took all complaints of misconduct very seriously." Earlier this month, Bloomberg's Jason Schreier claimed that the mood at Bungie regarding Marathon was not great. There's a reason that it was planned for this year and slipped a whole year, and people that I've talked to are a little pessimistic about it even hitting its current planned deadline, but we'll see. I don't actually know when that is. Sometime in 2025, I'm not sure. Like, Bungie can't catch a break. Bungie is in a terrible, terrible, terrible place. They've come back and, kicked out at 2, for lack of a better word, and things like that. But when you have this hanging over the heads of hanging over the kind of development of the next big game from Bungie, it makes you wonder not just what the direction of Marathon was ever going to be, but also how people were going to get to Marathon being the game it needed when being treated like this. I think it's incredibly unfortunate for, Bungie to try to act like the good guys for a large part of their existence, only to have such mistreatment and such abuse and such misconduct just rotten to the core. Like the same way we talk about, you know, Activision Blizzard being rotten to the core in terms of their treatment of people. Is that how we should be looking at Bungie, or how we should have looked at Bungie for the last little bit? Because it makes me wonder, like, as someone who enjoyed Destiny, as someone who likes Halo and like the original, you know, Halo games by Bungie, I start to wonder, like, what would I even want out of that studio? Like, do I just want the good people who made the best work that they possibly can leave this toxic, you know, dump of a studio and just do their own thing? Or do I think that Bungie can go back to being what a lot of people know and love Bungie to be? Like, do we just take Bungie out back? Because you'll lose so many good people in the process, and so many people who deserve to be in the higher ranking positions than the people who were alleged to have committed all of this misconduct, right? You think about the big wigs at Bungie showing people their classic car collection a few days before mass layoffs occur. Like, I don't want those people making creative decisions on Marathon or any other Bungie game, even Destiny 2, a game I'm not interested in playing anymore, but I don't want those people making those decisions. I barely want them, like, dictating the work-life balance of the people that are making the games that I may or may not be interested in playing. It's really gross. It's super unfortunate. It is a goddamn shame, in my opinion, that we got to this with Bungie, that this sort of abuse could allegedly take place. I hope everybody involved can move on and do the best work that they can and be comfortable and feel safe in their workplace, because this sort of shit is unacceptable, even when you factor in all the other fires that are currently existing at Bungie. We'll take another break and we'll be right back. Stick around. Welcome back to the podcast. Before we go, I just want to kind of give a quick update on what I got going on and what we're probably looking at for the next couple of weeks of content. Because I had planned to play a lot of Star Wars Outlaws, and that's not going to happen. So next week you might hear me kind of picking up some older games, going through my backlog of games. I've been also emulating a lot of PS2 games. I haven't talked about that much because I've been mostly poking at a handful of games, seeing what I like, seeing what I'm interested in, and kind of so on and so forth. But Squirrel with a Gun is out today, so maybe I'll check out Squirrel with a Gun and report back on how Squirrel with a Gun is. For the longest time, I wasn't too sure what the game actually is. Like, what is Squirrel with a Gun? And it seems like it is a puzzle shooter. It seems like you're solving a lot of puzzles in the world using your gun as a squirrel. Like, they kind of describe it as, let me read to you because if you probably saw the thing and you're like, wow, Squirrel with a Gun, that sounds crazy. I'm going to read to you what the description is on Steam now that the game's out. Game is about $25, maybe a little steep. I guess it really all depends on how much content there is and how good the game is, but we're looking at about $25 for Squirrel with a Gun. I just want to read the description. Squirrel meet gun. As the neighbor's most obnoxious rodent, develop a knack and a love for crime and mayhem in pursuit of golden acorns in this nutty sandbox shooter and puzzle platformer. Fight tooth, claw, and gun to escape a secret underground facility and defeat the agents. And then they kind of give some more descriptions. Solve interactive puzzle rooms to collect golden acorns. Navigate unique puzzle challenges to collect all the golden acorns by getting creative with how you use your arsenal of weapons, using weapon recoil to give yourself a boost. Collect enough golden acorns to unlock hidden sections of the game. It also seems like there's somewhat of an open world. Like, it shows the squirrel driving around in an RC car, hitting an old lady, like running over an old lady with the RC car, which is kind of fun. And then it shows like, Squirrel's got a whole bunch of guns, rocket launchers, grenade launchers, submachine guns, sniper rifles, pistols, all sorts of goofy stuff. I guess I wasn't really expecting it to be a puzzle platformer, but you know what? It might be all right. I'll check that out. Star Trucker. Star Trucker is out September 3rd. My understanding is that Star Trucker is a trucking simulation type game where you are in space. That's coming to Game Pass and PC, I believe. Age of Mythology Retold is out September 4th. I'll mess around with some Age of Mythology. I'm more of an Age of Empires guy, but I'll mess around with Age of Mythology. I know that Harry Potter Quidditch Champions is also out September 3rd. Very curious about how that turns out. And I know that Visions of Mana is also out today as well. That's about $80 wherever you choose to get it. I downloaded the demo for Visions of Mana. I didn't love it, but I might mess around with it a little bit more. We'll see how it is, but I'm just feeling a little flat, feeling a little defeated because I was all ready to be like, 40, 50 hours of Star Wars Outlaws, let's go. And now it's like, what do I do? So I'm going to do a little bit of soul searching this week, maybe poke around with a couple of different games. Whatever you play, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope it's better than Star Wars Outlaws. And hey, if you do get a chance to play Star Wars Outlaws, or I'm wrong or whatever, you can let me know. I can't be factually wrong about my opinion because it's an opinion, but I would welcome the conversation anyways. And that's going to do it for the podcast. I have been GnittWitt. It's a bit of a shorter one, but what are you going to do? You can find everything that I do over at my Linktree. That's linktree.com/GnittWitt, GnittWitt. That's Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Skies, all of that good stuff. Though I'm not as active on Twitter as I claim to be. But that's going to do it for the podcast. Take it easy.